This Parsha podcast is dedicated by the Yashar family in loving memory of John ben Farajala. May his soul be elevated in heaven. I have to tell you that we outfoxed the Apple podcast algorithm. Yes, it's true. Several podcast listeners, they reported that the last couple of weeks, the Parsha rebroadcasts weren't working. Well, what's the rebroadcast? Every year, we have a different theme for the Parsha podcast. And several years ago, we tried to cover the entire Parsha in about an hour, all the major themes, the storylines, the narratives of the Parsha, tried to cover it all, not just one or two or three major ideas. And ever since that year, we re-released that show, that episode each Sunday. We called it the rebroadcast. So everyone knows that this is not new. It's from a few years ago. Now, a few weeks ago, for some reason, the Apple podcasts stopped surfacing these episodes. I checked on my phone. The other podcast players, it was working, but not on Apple Podcasts, which has the lion's share of the listenership. So I had to troubleshoot. Maybe the title, it says rebroadcast. Maybe it's the content. Maybe they have some sort of hash. So this week I renamed it The Rebroadcast. It was called Rebroadcast. Now it's The Rebroadcast. I also did a minor edit, and I'm very happy to announce that we outfoxed the Apple podcast algorithm. The rebroadcast, now called The Rebroadcast, is back. Thank God that's fixed. Please God, if there's any more troubles with that, if you have any problems listening, just send me a text, send me an email. We want to make sure that it's always up and always available for your listening pleasure. This is the penultimate Parsha podcast of year 9 of the Parsha podcast. The theme that we chose for this year is Torah is our ID. And the I stands for an idea or an insight, and the D stands for a dilemma. And this year we had the great privilege of recording it live on torchzoom.com Tuesday evenings at 8 p.m. Central. A few quick announcements. First of all, the upcoming 2 weeks, meaning V'zos HaBracha, the final Parsha, and Bereshis, which is the first Parsha of next year's cycle with the help of the Almighty, we won't be gathering together on torchzoom.com on Tuesday, because it's all sorts of festivals of Sukkot and Shmini Atzeres and Simchas Torah and so on. So please, I will get together again on torchzoom.com for Parshas Noach of next year's cycle of 5786. And that will be on October 21st with the brand new time. Instead of 8 p.m. Central, we're moving it a little bit earlier to 6 p.m. Central. But please, God, we hope to have another wonderful year of Parsha podcasts. And I'm happy to announce that we have a new theme. Yeah, there's a new theme for next year. No more dilemmas. Maybe every once in a while we can throw in a dilemma. This is going to be our 6th year, please God, with a Parsha podcast theme. We had the A and Q. Remember the A and Q? It's not questions and answers. It's answers and questions. I ask the question, and you have to send me the answer. And we had a bunch of people that didn't miss a single week. Every week, they came up with an answer to some of the very challenging questions that we posed at the end of the show. And the next year was the exquisite insight. And the next year, it was Torah raises your IQ. People like to listen to Mozart. Oh, that's going to make me really smart and bright and sharp and clever. But Torah is machtimas pesi, takes the fool, makes him wise. So the I is an idea. The Q is a question. Last year, you recall, it was dad. Deep and deeper. We don't just go deep, we go deep and deeper. And this year, Torah is your ID. And please God, this upcoming year, year 10 of the Parsha podcast, the theme is going to be Parsha Backstage. Everyone, you learn the Parsha, and you see, there's personalities and the stories and some of the mitzvos. But what's the backstage? What's the story behind the story? What are those subtleties that we may have totally missed? What are the insights that we can only appreciate once we look very carefully, very closely? What are the secret connections, the hidden messages, the things that you missed the first time, nay, the first 10 times you read it? What are the deeper insights that will give us a greater appreciation of the profundity and the perfection of Torah? Parsha backstage with the help of the Almighty. That's the theme for year 10, but we're still in year 9. It's the penultimate Parsha. It's Parshas Haazinu. This Parsha is primarily a song. It's the third of 3 songs in the Torah. And it's a song about our history, our people, the past, the present, the future, this world and the next. It's a comprehensive song. It's an intricate song. It's a richly woven prophetic song. Each verse is interpreted in so many different dimensions, in so many different ways, in the past, in the present, in the future. Essentially, our Parsha, this song encapsulates all of Jewish history, all of human history in 43 verses. Everything, both big and small, our sages tell us. Every person, everything is hinted to in some way in this most exquisite song. Broadly speaking, the Ramban tells us that there are several meta themes in the song. It starts off with the kindness that the Almighty bestowed upon us when He selected us, when He chose us to be His portion. And then it pivots to talk about the wonderful goodnesses that He bestowed upon us and how He bequeathed to us the lands of fearsome and great nations. And all the goodness and the wealth and the honor and the prestige and the prominence that He showered us with. And how that ecstatic high can lead to becoming fat and corpulent, and can lead to rebellion. When things are good, we tend to forget God and veer away from Him and seek other systems of living, and God forbid, worship foreign gods. And that triggers the next part of the song. There's anger, there's wrath, there's punishment, there is redirection from heaven on high. And sometimes it gets so bad that there is exile, and there's pestilence, and there's famine, and there's ferocious beasts, and there is flaming swords. When scattered in all directions, in every corner, then at the end, there is reclamation. These are some of the major themes of the song, and all of them, the Ramban tells us, they all happened. When he's writing that commentary in the 13th century, looking back at a retrospective of Jewish history, it's amazing to observe, says the Ramban, just how uncannily accurate the words of this song are. Now, to try to cover the whole song, maybe we could do a whole year of Parsha podcasts. I was thinking, Parsha's voracious. There's so much. It's the one week it's the one Parsha we never have a full week to study. This year we only have 2 days. And it's maybe the most difficult Parsha to study. And every year I say, you know what, maybe we should do a whole year of Parsha podcast just on Parsha's voracious. Certainly, Parshas Haazinu is a candidate for similar treatment. So we're going to try to pick up 1 or 2 ideas that are powerful, are relevant, are instructive, and are topical that will enhance our understanding of the Parsha and be helpful for us as we prepare for the great and awesome day of Yom Kippur, which at the time of this recording is less than 24 hours away. The Parsha begins, Haazinu, lend me your ear. Haazinu hashamayim, Moshe speaking to the heavens, which is, again, you just read that, like, what does that even mean? How is Moshe talking to the heavens and telling them, instructing them? Midrash points out to listen, to pay attention. If you and I were to go cry out to the heavens would, maybe justifiably, ignore us. Moshe is summoning the heavens. Pay attention, listen carefully. V'sishma aretz, and let the land hear my words. Moshe, for some reason, again, this is discussed by all the commentators. Moshe begins his song, his prophecy, by addressing the heavens and the earth. And again, verse 2, you see just how poetic and how rich and how layered it is. Ya'arov kamatar litchi. My words, let them drip like rain. Let them flow, let my words flow like dew, like winds that shower grass, and like sharp rain that hits the vegetation. Moshe, again, we have to understand, what does this mean? Different types of rain, and why is Moshe comparing his words to rain? All this, of course, is discussed by all the commentators. Tishem Asher Ekra, let me summon the name of Hashem. Give praise to God. Moshe begins his song with the content part, and he tells us, verse 4, Hatzur Tamim Pa'alo, the rock. That's a reference to the Almighty, whose deeds are perfect. All of his ways are just. Kelumana, a God that's trustworthy. Ve'einavel, that is not corrupt. Tzaddik, he's righteous. V'yashar, who he is straight. We have a description of God. He's like a rock. He's reliable. He's perfect. All of his ways are just. He is trustworthy. Ve'einavel, there's no corruption. There's no falsehood. Moshe is praising God. He's righteous. He is straight. Now, if you were to read this verse and say, okay, we're praising God Almighty, what are we going to say about him? Well, he's called like the rock. It's one of the names of God in the Torah. Tzur Yisrael, the rock of Israel. He's reliable. Okay, why does Moshe use that term? All the commentators talk about that. He's perfect. All of his ways are just. He's reliable. He's not corrupt. He's righteous. He is straight. He's upstanding, so to speak. Now, does this sound like much of a compliment? God is not corrupt. That sounds like a very low bar. What's Moshe saying? Einavel, God is, his ways are just, are righteous, and he's not corrupt. If we were to have a human judge, we would hope that many of these descriptions of God would apply to the human judge as well. To be straight, to be fair, to be trustworthy, to not be corrupt. This is Moshe's opening salvo of our song, and he's praising Almighty God. His ways are just. He acts with justice. Ve'einavel, and there's no falsehood, there's no corruption. What sort of praise is Moshe bestowing upon God? It seems quite muted. This question is asked by some of the commentators, and the answer, courtesy of Rabbi Israel Salanter, very interesting, very powerful, a bit surprising, and very topical. We're now a day before Yom Kippur. This is the end of the 10 days of repentance. This is part of the day. It's preparing for the crescendo, which is the Ne'ilah, which is the sealing of the judgment. And if we're forward-looking and we're taking this seriously, we're thinking about ways to make sure that we end up with a good judgment. This insight that we're going to learn about our Parsha, it's probably the best way, the best insight, the best tactic to tip the scale in our favor in the judgment that's concluded on Yom Kippur. Suppose there's a criminal. He did a crime, and it's on camera. There are witnesses, evidence. He's guilty. Well, he's going to be arrested. Terrible. There's a crime. But there's a system of justice. Well, he's arrested. In our system, there's a trial. A jury of his peers. And in the trial, what do? They present the evidence. What do we know? What can we prove? And the objective of the trial is to investigate. What happened? Was there a crime or not? And to arrive at justice. To arrive at a verdict that's true, that's not corrupted. And what happens if the guy was actually guilty? It's unanimous. The jury agrees. Everyone agrees. They're guilty. So what happens? Well, they have to face the consequences of their behavior, of their choices, of their crime. So what happens? Well, it depends. What did they do? Some crimes maybe have a monetary penalty or probation, or maybe there's capital punishment. Terrible. Or they go to prison. Whatever the punishment is, it's fitting for the particular crime that they did. Now, suppose they get the punishment a year, 12 months in the slammer. It's awful. It's terrible. I did hear, by the way, that some of the prisons have access to podcasts, and I've gotten lots of communication from people who are paying their price to society, and hopefully these podcasts can be insightful and rehabilitating for them, which is interesting. Side point, but God forbid someone's in jail. So who's punished? How does our system work? Our system works that the guilty is punished. You can't hire someone else to serve your time. If you're guilty, God forbid, well, you have to pay the consequences, to suffer the consequences. But who else is punished? Is there anyone else that's punished who is not guilty? So we think, no, but we only put one person in jail. But what if the criminal was married, has a wife, and now his wife doesn't have a husband for a year? She's suffering. What if it's a family with kids? They're suffering. He used to put his kids to sleep at night. He used to get them dressed in the morning, take them to school, bring them ice cream, take them to the ball game, play with them. And now, God forbid, daddy's behind bars. The kids are punished. What did they do? What did the spouse do? The kids are innocent. Why is our system punishing a child who's innocent? A spouse who did nothing wrong. Suppose the guilty person had a business with employees, with patrons, with clients. They're all suffering. What'd they do wrong? They have friends. They have a community that rely upon them. And they're punished too. What did they do wrong? There are so many people in the orbit of the criminal who are now punished for a crime that they did not commit. Do you know why an innocent child is punished? An innocent spouse? Innocent coworkers? Innocent friends? Because our system of judgment is corrupt. It's punishing all sorts of innocent people. There is a lot of collateral damage in our system of justice. Someone, God forbid, is punished. There's fallout. And that fallout hits all sorts of innocent people. But that's our system. In our system of justice, there is injustice. We try to do our best, but our system necessitates the punishing of innocence. Moshe begins his song. Hatzur tamim pa'alo. God, the rock. His deeds are perfect. All of his ways are just. He's trustworthy, and there's absolutely no corruption. When God does justice, there isn't an iota of corruption. Anyone who suffers in any tangential way from the judgment of God, whatever they experience, whatever they absorbed, that's what the divine judgment determined they need. Now, of course, we don't understand God's calculations. We can't. It's not possible for us to know all the variables and all the factors. We can't fathom the depth of judgment. We don't know, of course, what our soul needs and what our status really is and where our soul came from, what's its destiny, what it needs to fulfill, maybe what happened in the previous life. We have no idea. We're flying blind. But the Torah is telling us it's an amazing praise that when God dispenses justice, there's absolutely no corruption. There's no corruption at all. All of the fallout of whatever Hashem does in justice, even that is just. Now, again, we have no way to see the cause and effect. We don't know why people have it coming. But that's what the Torah is telling us. There is no corruption. There's no innocent bystander who is a casualty, an innocent casualty of any act of God. Human justice. It could be as well-meaning It could be with intention to do just goodness and justice. It's full of corruption. We're trying to do justice. We're trying to be blind in judgment, to not favor anyone. But there's all sorts of innocent casualties. God's justice is completely righteous. All of his ways are just. There's absolutely no corruption. There's absolutely no injustice. Now that's what Moshe is telling us, but there's very important ramifications for us. Rabbi Salanter, he used to say that this recognition that there's absolutely no corruption in God's judgment, this provides the best tactic to merit a good judgment on Rosh Hashanah and on Yom Kippur. When a person becomes a public personage, they have other people who are relying upon them, who are dependent upon them. The more dependence a person has, the more people need to be found guilty for them to be punished as well. Because when a person is punished, everyone in their orbit is also suffering on some level. And because there cannot be any injustice, any corruption, the larger someone's life footprint is, the more people who would be armed, so to speak, if they receive a bad judgment, well, that's a form of fortification to ensure that they receive a good judgment. God will not punish anyone, will not render a difficult judgment to anyone if any outgrowth, any ramification, any consequence of that is corrupt. And therefore, says Rabbi Salanter, you want to know the best way to ensure that you have a good judgment, Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur? Make sure that you're a person who does so much for so many people, and that would, in effect, mean that anything bad that happens to you would necessarily have to happen, some degree of that would have to happen to all of those people, and that's the way to protect yourself. Most people, they live for themselves. After all, when you're hungry, you got to feed yourself. You have to breathe for yourself. You have to sleep for yourself. You have to take care of yourself. And that's, of course, well known and understood. There's an insight in humanity. It's possible to live for others as well, to care for others as well, to invest your life not just to advance your own existence, but the existence of others. Of course, that's what it means to have a family, right? How come when some random person wants dinner, I don't have to pay for it, but it's my kid who wants, I got to pay for it? The essence of having a family is expanding yourself to say, there are other people who are now just a part of me, an extension of me. And that could go even further. When someone becomes a kind person like Abraham, the whole world he cared for. The whole world he tried to help. The whole world he would provide food, hospitality towards. He's the model. He's the paragon of kindness. And we try to emulate him, to try to, of course, be there for our family, for our children, for our spouses, for our siblings, for our parents, for our friends, for our classmates, for our community. And the more people rely on a person, the more that someone is a public personage, they're responsible for others, for the community, for their whole city, the larger the footprint of their responsibility, the more people they're connected to, the more people are dependent upon them, the more protection, Rabbi Salanter says, they have in judgment. The more people that would be affected by you, God forbid, by someone, God forbid, getting a bad judgment, the more likely it is that God says, okay, well, there can't be any corruption in judgment. This person, I cannot touch, or I have to give him a good judgment, or else there would be corruption. And therefore, says Rabbi Salanter, the best advice and the order of the day, what are we trying to do? One of the things we're trying to do here is to say, I want to live for other people. And that will guarantee, nothing can be guaranteed, we don't know the ways of Hashem, but that is the best tactic to ensure a positive judgment, to be a person, to be a man, to be a woman who is dedicated to others, who's committed to helping the public. And the more people you're helping, the more people you're involved with, the more people who need you, who rely upon you, the more likely it is that you're not standing by yourself in judgment. It's not just me in judgment. It's everyone who is in my orbit, who is connected to me. They're also in judgment together with me. And the more people that rely upon you, the more likely is, sorry, this person can't be touched. This person cannot have a negative judgment because the ways of God are all just. And there's absolutely no shred, no scintilla of corruption. Maybe this is why we read this section during these weeks. Last week in Shul, it's the Shabbos Shuvah, it's the week between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. And by Mincha they read Haazinu, Hatzur Tamim Pa'alo. We read this verse. Monday, that's yesterday, at the time of this recording, I had the great privilege of being in Shul when we read from this portion of the Torah. There's no corruption at all. It cannot be that someone who is innocent is going to be negatively affected by God's judgment. Says Rabbi Salanta, that's the solution. That's the best tactic to be meritorious in judgment. And we see that this is really the mark of a great person, the definition even of a great person in the Torah. It's interesting that in the Talmudic parlance, someone who is a great person, that the term is actually a large person. A Gava Rabba or Adam Gadol, a large person. Because the definition of someone's greatness is how many other people are they including underneath the definition of who they are. And of course, the greatest leader we've ever had is Moshe. Why was Moshe selected to lead the nation? Why was Moshe chosen? Sure, he had great pedigree. He's a Levite. His father is Amram, but why Moshe? So the Midrash tells us the first episode of Moshe's life as an adult. Chapter 2, verse 11 of Exodus. Vayigdal Moshe. Moshe grew up, which means he grew up. It also means he expanded. He became large. Vayetze elachav, and he went out to see the suffering of his brethren. Vayarbis avlozim, he saw in their suffering. And then it says he saw an Egyptian man striking a Hebrew man of his fellow. And the Midrash gives us some more details about what happened in this opening episode of Moshe's adulthood. The Midrash notes that it says in one verse, it says Moshe saw, Vayar, he saw, it says it twice. So the Midrash gives us more insight into what Moshe saw. It said that he noticed not just the suffering of the masses, he saw the particular details of every person's plight. He saw that one person was really big and strong, was forced to do a task really designed for a much smaller person. And a man was given a woman's job, and a woman was given a man's job, and an old person was given a young person's job, and vice versa. And Moshe said, I'm a prince, but I'm lowering myself. And he went to help every individual that he was able to help. Concludes the Midrash. Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu, God said, you left your own affairs, and you went to witness and suffer alongside the plight of your brethren, and you treated them like equals, like peers, like brothers. I am going to depart the higher realms, and I will speak with you. Why did God speak to Moshe? Why did God appear to Moshe and bestow upon Moshe the Torah, to use Moshe as the conduit to deliver the Torah to humanity, to the nation? Because Moshe exhibited this quality of caring for others, of trying to help others, of expanding himself. He became great. He became large. He expanded himself to incorporate within himself others. Our sages tell us, Shakrul Moshe keneged kol Yisrael. Moshe is equal to all of Israel. Moshe had such an expansive personage that within him was every single member of this nation. And that's why he was worthy to lead them. Any judgment on Moshe was effectively a judgment on the entire nation. Now, after 40 years of leadership, Moshe had to be replaced. Moshe needed a successor. And of course, Moshe's successor was Joshua. Why was Joshua selected? Chapter 27, verse 16 of the book of Numbers, Parsha's Pinchas. Moshe asks God to appoint a successor for him, and it's a very unusual verse. Yifkod Hashem Elokei Haruchos. Appoint God, the master of all the spirits, L'chal basar, for all flesh. Very unusual terminology. Appoint a man upon the congregation. Why is Moshe describing God as the God of the spirits for all flesh? So Rashi explains that Moshe is saying to God, you know the uniqueness of every individual, how everyone's different. Appoint for them a leader who will suffer, who will tolerate every individual based upon their own unique individual characteristics. We're all different. And we all tolerate ourselves. Everyone has idiosyncrasies, eccentricities. A person tolerates themselves. Why? Because that's me. A great leader tolerates all these people, and everyone's different. Everyone's got a different mishagas, a different idiosyncrasy, eccentricity. A great leader tolerates them all. Why? Because the definition of a great leader is someone who expands themselves to include all of those people, all of their constituents within themselves. You tolerate yourself. You tolerate others because you view them as an extension of yourself. It's a very powerful idea. Us humans, we don't need to be limited to ourselves. We don't need to be just selfish, caring about ourselves. That's how we start off life. That's a baby. Baby cares only about themselves. But as you grow, as you mature, you become larger. You start to notice other people. Oh, there's other people in this world. And they're also dealing with, each one has their own package of things that they're dealing with, their own bundle of challenges. No one has a charmed life without anything going on. That's for animals and angels. We all have stuff going on. We're all dealing with things. And as you grow, and hopefully you begin to notice the people. Oh, there's other inhabitants, fellow travelers in this wonderful journey of life. And the hope is, and that's really that the Torah is helping us go along this path. Love your fellow as yourself. That includes all of Torah. That's the goal of Torah, to become a bigger person. Not just to live for yourself, to be selfishly cloistered in your own little cocoon. It's not easy, because you got to break yourself open. But it's not good for a person to be alone. At the beginning, where this is brought into existence, that's marriage. You take one person, you break them open, and you expand them to include another person. And the Talmud tells us, every man that's not married, hate to say this, for anyone who's listening who is not married, but that's what the Talmud says. Eino Adam is not a person. Why? Because the definition of a person in the Torah's eyes is someone who's not just living for themselves, who's broken themselves open to incorporate someone else in their life. The definition of a person is a great person, someone who could transcend their inborn, their innate selfishness, break themselves open to include others. And that's the official beginning of greatness. But the real transcendent ones, the Moshes, the Joshuas, the Abrahams, they expand and expand and expand. And they love others, and they care for others, and they have concern for others, and they tolerate others, and they bear the burden of others. And when they stand in judgment, everyone who's underneath the umbrella of their own existence, they're all there in judgment with them. And that's the best insurance as we enter Yom Kippur. Now, I will tell you something very counterintuitive that you're not going to like. You're not going to like it because it's going to violate everything that you ever heard from any responsible person. But at least the idea you can appreciate. The Chazon Ish said, you shouldn't get life insurance. I knew you wouldn't like it. I knew you wouldn't like it. Why? He says, God forbid someone, they have a family, they have children, they have a wife, they have responsibilities, they have enormous responsibilities to tend to their family. You get life insurance. What if, God forbid, something happens? What he points out is that by taking life insurance, you're in effect removing some people from the consequences of you, God forbid, dying early. Because if you don't have life insurance, I'm getting the looks there. I'm getting the looks. I knew you wouldn't agree with it. And by the way, I do have life insurance. Most people say still get life insurance, but the point he's trying to say is that if someone doesn't have life insurance, well, then what's going to be with their children? Who's going to pay for their children to be raised properly? That helps them in judgment. So in effect, he's saying is that if you don't have life insurance, it's another reason why you'll be more likely to have a good judgment. Now, again, I will say that this is what it's an idea that he said, and the concept is true, even though what I advise is everyone should get life insurance. But the concept that there's a way to fortify yourself to have a better judgment, I'm not living with myself. I'm living for other people as well. I'm more of a communal person. And this is one of the things we're supposed to work on as we prepare for this great day of Yom Kippur. How do I expand myself, become a greater person, a bigger person, a larger person, to bring other people into my orbit? There's no injustice at all in God's judgment. There's no corruption. And we can use that to our advantage. I want to say maybe a slightly similar idea. Maybe another way to phrase this same concept. There are teachings that seem to be contradictory about how we're supposed to view these days of awe, the high holidays. You read the Talmud, it's scary. You read the prayers, it's scary. The books are open. The books of the living and the books of the dead are open. How can you say Hallel, the Talmud tells us? How can you have the praise for God that we typically have on festivals? How can you have the Rosh Hashanah? The books of the living and the books that are open. That's pretty terrifying. There are 3 books that are opened. Another teaching the Talmud tells us. Who's going to live? Who's going to die? On the other hand, our sages point out that when we go into judgment on Rosh Hashanah, we dress to the nines. It's a festival. We made sure that we have to have celebratory feasts. And why? Our sages tell us because we know for sure that God is going to do a miracle for us. We're confident. We're confident that we will experience a miracle. And the comments say, wait a minute. How can you be confident that you'll experience a miracle? First of all, we're never supposed to rely on miracles. But how can you be confident in that when the books of the living and the dead are opened? And what the commentators explain is that there's a difference between individuals and the nation. The nation will surely endure. Individuals, well, then for them, we're not so sure. And therefore, just as we're told to expand ourselves to include others, and that gives us more fortification against a bad judgment, we try during these days to deepen our connection with our people. Our people are like a tree of life. And anyone who cleaves to the people is part of the communal judgment. They're likely to endure and to have a good judgment as well. It's a good time to think, what can I do for my people? How can I be a team player for the nation? The nation will endure. We're guaranteed. We're confident in this miracle. The more intimately bound up I am with my nation, the more connected I am to the tree of life that is this nation. We're on the doorsteps of Yom Kippur. We're advised to take this seriously, to seek out the best ways to merit, to have a good judgment. And we find a gem in this week's Parsha, Hatzur Tamim Pa'alo, the rock. His deeds are all perfect. All his ways are just. Every way is just. He's reliable and there's no corruption. God is just 1,000%. There's no corruption. 1,000%. That can be used, ought to be used for us as we try to navigate these days and ensure that we merit a good judgment. May we be so fortunate, all of us, to merit a positive judgment this Yom Kippur. We shall be signed, sealed in the book of life. It should be a wonderful year for all of us, for our families, for our communities, for the entire nation, for the entire world. That's an idea, a powerful idea, a useful idea, a relevant idea. But now it's time for a dilemma. Maybe the greatest dilemma of all. You want to soar to great heights. You want to climb great mountains. You want to reach the heavens. You want to undertake outrageous, bold, and audacious goals. You want to make an impact. You want to change the world. You want to have a massive tectonic impact. But how do you do it? How do you elevate to the heavens? How do you accomplish amazing things? How do you accomplish maybe the impossible? Should you give up on your dreams? Should you aim for something more manageable? Should you subsist with mediocrity? There's a fascinating characterization of this week's Parsha. In the beginning of the Parsha, where it's describing the goodnesses that God did for us and how he took us out of Egypt and how he formed us as a nation, it describes God as an eagle, kinesher, like an eagle, who rouses its young, who spreads his wings to take them, and who lifts them upon his pinions. It's a description, very poetic, how the Almighty treated us as an eagle treats its young. Like an eagle rousing its nest, hovering over its young, spreading its wings to take them, and carrying its young on its pinions. This is how you would describe the relationship that God has with us. The way an eagle treats its young, that's how God treats us. And the commentaries give all sorts of explanations as to what does this mean. So Rashi, of course, tells us, if you look at an eagle rousing its sleeping young, doesn't startle them. An eagle's got so much power and ferocity and oomph and intensity to it, but it treats its young with gentleness and with mercy. God roused us in Egypt. We were sleeping. We were in a deep spiritual slumber. But there's a whole year where God was slowly rousing us up. We're starting to see all these miracles, and we're starting to see Egypt slowly being submitted and humbled before God. The arousal of the spirit of the nation was done in the same way that an eagle rouses its young, slowly and gently. And then when we traveled, there were all sorts of dangers that we were going to face. And when we traveled, it's like the small babies, the vulnerable eaglets on the wings of the mighty eagle mother, soaring high above all the dangers, protecting us from all perils. This is a touching and heartwarming description of God's treatment of our people. And the commentaries tell us this is not just the past, this is the way he continues to treat us. We're the eaglets, the baby eagles in the analogy, and God, in the metaphor, he's the eagle, so to speak. He rouses us up and takes us on this journey. If you look at this analogy, there's something very powerful that we learn over here. God, so to speak, the eagle in the analogy, rouses the young. It's time to move. We have a journey to go. We have odyssey to undertake. We have to go to a very distant land. Wake up. The eagle is going to wake up the babies. The babies still need to wake up. The eagle is going to spread its wings and allow the babies to climb up. The babies still need to climb up. They still need to do something. Yes, the eagle will be gentle and flapping its wings. The eagles, babies, the eaglets, need to climb up, to wake up, climb up on the wings. And once they take that step, well, then the eagle can soar to great heights and transport them to great distances. There's a journey that the Almighty wants us to take. And we have an analogy with a description in the Torah. God is like an eagle in the example. He is willing to do all the heavy lifting. We have to do our role. He will arouse us. He will wake us up. He'll be gentle in how he gets our attention. But we still have to process that. We still have to be willing to be awakened. And we have to climb up, take that first step of that very long journey. In our ascent to the stratospheres, we have a co-pilot. We're not on our own. Now, it's not really fair to describe us as a co-pilot because we do 1% or maybe 1/10 of 1%, and God does everything else. Something is expected of us. We have to wake up. We have to be roused from our slumber. We have to take those small steps to climb aboard the wings. But once we do that, once we take that first step, once we initiate our interest, our desire, our yearning to reach great heights, God pledges to bring us there. There's a very famous midrash that every child knows. Every child knows this midrash. It's a midrash about Mount Sinai. Mount Sinai, we're told, was a small, relatively small mountain. And the midrash talks about the dispute between all the different mountains. Which mountain will merit to have the revelation upon it? And the midrash tells us that all the mountains were jockeying to have the Torah given upon them. Mount Tabor, Mount Carmel, all the mountains of the whole world were all saying, we're worthy. We're so big. We're so impressive. We're so lofty. We're so elevated. It's fitting to give the Torah upon us. But Mount Sinai was small, was humble, was lowly. And God says, okay, you're small, you're lowly. I'm going to give the Torah upon you. God descended, so to speak, from the great heights onto the very low, humble, modest mountain. The question that I have in this midrash is that there's an assumption. There's an assumption. The assumption is that everyone agrees that the Torah has to be given on a mountain. The only question is, which mountain will it be? There's all sorts of other places that can be the venues for the giving of the Torah. You can have a valley. You can have an isthmus, an archipelago, the plains, the straits, the savannas, the mesas, islands. There are all sorts of geographical features that could have been the place where the Torah was given. But none of those were options. The Torah had to be given on a mountain. And the only question is, which mountain? I think that this reveals the role that we play versus the role that God plays in any great achievement. It has to be in a mountain. The Torah is going to be the touch point of heaven and earth. Heaven, well, that's where the Torah was. And earth, that's where we are. So there has to be some sort of bridge connecting these two. And it has to be in a mountain, meaning we have to climb up, do our part, so to speak, and God will do his part. There has to be a meeting of the two, but there has to be something that we do. We must elevate ourselves. It's got to be in a mountain. And the question is just, which mountain? how high will we have to climb? And the bottom line is that Sinai was a small mountain. It was a modest mountain. It was a low mountain. It wasn't so high. In the end, that's the mountain that prevailed. If Mount Everest, Annapurna, K2, Kilimanjaro, one of those massive mountains was the one upon which the Torah was given, we would have to do so much more. But no, God's saying, you have to do just a little. You're the eagle. You're asleep. Wake up. It's going to be a very pleasant cooing of the alarm clock. Wake up. Could you do that? Could you climb up that little mountain? Could you climb up a little bit onto the wings of the eagle? Could you do that? I think that you could do. We must ascend the mountain to reach the heavens, but it's a low mountain. We must initiate. We have to climb aboard the Eagle Express. We have to open up an opening in our heart the size of the eye of a needle. Once we do that, God will take flight. God will descend upon the mountain. God will blast through any blockages and pave an opening the size of an auditorium for us to march through, to trundle through. We may feel like we can't accomplish great things, because you know what? We can't. The highest we could climb, I don't know, Mount Sinai. If we have excellent Sherpas and extra oxygen and mountaineering training and some guts, we could do some other mountains. But even the highest mountain of them all, it's what, 29,000 feet? It's nothing. You want to achieve the stratosphere, you can't do it on your own. Sorry, you're right. Maybe you should give up. The Torah is telling us we have a co-pilot. God is willing to do most of the work. We have to do a little bit. We have to initiate. We have to take the first step. Climb aboard. Ascend the mountain. It's a modest mountain. You have to ascend, though. We take that first step. We initiate. We come to purify ourselves. God will open up the way for us. May we be so fortunate to accomplish great things in this upcoming year. May we all be inscribed, sealed in the book of life, a good life, Laman Chalakim Chaim, the highest level of life, a life that we live not just for ourselves, but for others, and of course, for God. It should be a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful year. I want to thank you all for a wonderful year of Torah study. 5785, a little bit of 5786. Year 9 of the Parsha podcast. We still have 1 week to go, but I don't know when we're going to do it. We'll hopefully do it. But it was a wonderful journey. I want to thank all of y'all for joining me from the Torch Center in Easton, Texas. For most of the year, we spent some time in Canada and other places. But for most of the year, we were here. So it was great to have this journey together with y'all. And please God, it'll be a wonderful year of only blessing and only goodness and great health and vigor and vitality and happiness and prosperity and only goodness and lots of fantastic Torah, please God, together in the upcoming year. It should be a wonderful year for all of us and, of course, for our brethren as well, especially those in Israel, especially those dealing with very, very difficult challenges there. It should be a wonderful year. I thank you for listening. Have a wonderful Yom Kippur. Meaningful, productive, uplifting Yom Kippur. An easy fast. It should be a year that we really, really accomplish those great heights. We know, we learned this is Parsha. We learned we could do it. We just have to take that step, and then we're off. I hope to speak to y'all sometime soon. Have a wonderful day, a wonderful Yom Kippur, a fantastic Shabbos, a fantastic festival of Sukkot, Zman Haazinu, the time of our joy, which is right after Yom Kippur. No rest for the weary. Who wants rest? We want to celebrate. We want to enjoy the fruits of our labor. Zman Haazinu, time of our joy. There's no great joy. There's no joy that matches the joy of being cleansed and purified on Yom Kippur. We should all merit to have that joy and to celebrate many joyous occasions together. And of course, there's no joy like the joy of Torah. Let's celebrate that together as well. My email address is rabbiwolbe@gmail.com.